This is Hannibal from the Hannibal TV on YouTube, and I'm about to show you a clip from George Knapp, the famous UFO reporter, and Colm Kelleher, who is an experienced program manager in biotechnology and aerospace with Bigelow Aerospace, doing an interview with the Engaging the Phenomena podcast, where they are talking about, I don't know if it's UFOs or humans or a little bit of both. Could be black projects in combination with UAP sampling projects involving humans. And these are mostly, and cows, also mutilations. So these are examples of negative phenomenon, either by black military projects or ETs. Part of interviews that were done by Engaging the Phenomenon, where the link is in the description to the full podcast. So check it out.
How many UFO incursions there were onto these Air Force bases, because bottom line, these were national security implications that were happening. The second part of the Northern Tier was we had a long interview with Colonel Barry Hennessy, who was the legendary head of the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. We had a long interview with him regarding the Project Northern Tier. And, he told us that a lot of the UFO incursions into these Air Force bases were actually penetration detection operations that were orchestrated by Air Force Office of Special Investigations to detect how well the Air Force, the United States Air Force, was in dealing with incursions into Air Force bases. But he said about 50% of the UFO activity that were detected at the time, they had no idea who they were. So they were not generated from AFOSI. They were not generated from the United States military. They were, quote unquote, unknown. So, Project Northern Tier was a sort of a full project aimed at delineating the national security implications of the UFO phenomena during the 1960s, 70s, and 80s.
And you have Project Colares.
Well, Colares was one of these sort of, outlier programs, because Project Colares was a study of a set of UFO encounters that had occurred on Colares Island, off the coast of northeastern Brazil during the 1970s. And the reason that they were of interest to OSAP and BAS were that a lot of people got injured, some people got killed, and there was definite evidence of UFOs attacking people, hunting people, burning people, causing extreme medical injuries as well as deaths. And this series of events was pretty well documented by the Brazilian Air Force intelligence when they deployed several people in the location of Colares Island. So, cut a long story short, OSAP BAS deployed a couple of teams to Brazil during the OSAP program. One team went to northeastern Brazil and actually investigated a current series of events, but the other team went to Brasilia, the capital of Brazil, and they interacted with some of the high-level officials that had to do with, the UFO incursions. And actually, that initiative did trigger a set of new documents that were released by the Brazilian government. So Project Colares was an outlier study of how UFOs were a threat, could be construed as a national security threat. But, we have no real evidence on mainland USA or in Europe of UFOs causing the kind of intentional injury on people that the UFOs in Colares caused.
I think Colares is a great example of what a UFO investigation should be, James. Unlike Arrow, which seems to be designed to explain stuff away on the shakiest of grounds, These guys get boots on the ground. They send investigators to the scene. They tracked down people who knew what they were talking about. They connected to the Brazilian government. They got those files and a lot more. And again, the frustration for us and for the UFO public should be there's a great big pile of information, much of which has never been seen about these very dramatic cases. These are not your friendly space brethren here to help the Earthlings. They're there hunting Earthlings, causing harm. It is an aberration in the history of the UFO phenomena, but it's an important one. These guys gathered that information. They were on the scene. They put it all into a giant database, and the public has not seen all the information that they gathered because it's all bottled up somewhere back in Washington, D.C.
So, I mean, during the Project Colares, were they able to collect DNA and medical records and medical effects?
No, at least we were not able to collect DNA from Colares victims.
Because they're foreign,
But
yeah.
we don't know what kind of samples were collected because they have never been made public. We had many attempts to nail down the physician on Colares Island who did a lot of blood sampling and who was sort of in the thick of this UFO wave. She was handling a lot of the injuries in the medical facility on Colares Island, which, by the way, was an extremely poverty-stricken area of northern Brazil with not a lot of facilities. And it turned out during this UFO wave, a lot of the top officials, including the mayor, abandoned Colares Island. So this doctor was kind of left on the island as sort of one of the main people left. And, you know, she did a great job, but it was very difficult to track her down. So if there were any samples taken, it would have been under those auspices.
And I don't want to paint anything one way or the other. It's just a piece of information that I want to put into this equation. Is that in Jacques Vallée, Forbidden Science, Volume 4, he talks about a document that he recovered. He said he secured a document talking about the CIA staging UFO events in Brazil and Argentina. And this is about the same time period. So twofold. Could any of that been at play? Number one. Number two, have Colm, you or George have seen that document that Jacques Vallée is referring to?
I have not seen that document.
Me neither.
Okay.
Colm, do you think it's an explanation for Colares?
At least it doesn't not an either or, right? It could be a part of what was going on.
You know, I have no idea without seeing the document and what it actually says. It's very difficult to evaluate. I haven't seen the document.
So I mean, let me rephrase the question for saying, is it possible that some of what was happening in Colares advanced human covert technology?
Possible? I guess so. I guess it could be possible.
Because it seems sometimes that Kit is going back and forth, and Kit will, you know, you'll hear about a statement he made. I know he doesn't like people to take what he said and construe it, but you know, it's relevant data and it's out there. So I know sometimes he'll lean in and you know say, you know, this is black program technology.
Well, if it was the CIA, somebody should go to jail for it.
Right, right.
Those injuries were real, you know.
And using UFOs as a cover to do so.
Yeah. So those injuries were real. People were hurt. Someone should pay for it if that was a U.S. government operation.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, I'm not trying to say either or that it's that is the case. I'm interested in Jacques' findings, and also the statement that he made on Jeffrey Mishlove, talking about similar instances where it seems that the UFO encounter in some cases, that by far not all, just in some cases, that it seemed that the encounters were hoaxed not on the part of the witness, but by somebody who had the resources to do so. So,
well, if we're wondering, does the CIA ever use the UFO mythology and muddled mess? Have they used it for their own ends? The answer is yeah. They've taken advantage of it in several different ways and have sown confusion on purpose to hide something else that they're doing. Yeah, that's happened.
and test yeah, like maybe advanced psychotronics and what have you, maybe.
Well, I think we had direct confirmation of that from Colonel Barry Hennessy. I mean, he was really upfront in saying that it was pretty routine for Air Force Office of Special Investigations to utilize the UFO phenomenon in order to cover some of these special access programs, advanced technology that the Air Force was using. And he said, that went back to the 50s, 60s, 70s. It was a very convenient way of clouding the issue. And so, a long time ago, we were talking about these levels of deception regarding the United States government, and a second completely separate level of deception that was associated with the UFO phenomenon. And it's one of the reasons why I've always thought that we have not made an awful lot of progress in the last 76 years since Kenneth Arnold first reported UFOs in June of 1947, because there are deceptive actors at work in the UFO field that cloud the issue. My background is in immunology and biochemistry, and I'm used to setting up controlled experiments where all the variables are controlled. And once you ask the question in a particular way, you do get an answer. That is not the case in the UFO field, where all of the variables are being manipulated all the time, and that the average sort of attempt to gain information in the UFO field is through the lens of a double layer of deception, one from the phenomenon and one from the United States government. So it does not make research in the UFO field particularly easy.
An example is the cattle mutilations, James. Colm has wrote a whole book about it, that there is a legitimate mystery there. Cattle mutilations undergoing, these cows carved up, 10,000 or so cases. No one has ever been caught. It's not cults. It's not coyotes. It's a very sophisticated sort of biological sampling operation, tracking something through our food chain. That there's a legitimate mystery there, conducted by persons or people or vehicles unknown. And then there's another layer of that where it's humans that are doing it. Colm documented it, that there are humans who are sort of masking themselves under the umbrella of UFOs, knowing that because it's so weird, nobody's ever going to investigate it, but they're all too human doing the very same thing.
This comes up sometimes is UFO baiting, coaxing or, trying to lure UFOs in, either with, nuclear technology, assets, and or individuals of interest. Did OSAP ever deal with that?
Well, I guess, peripherally, if you go all the way back to, Skinwalker Ranch, there were attempts to lure the UFO in regarding digging on the property, altering the topography, altering the terrain, and in a controlled way, and then observing the uptick in UFO activity. I mean, there's various ways of approaching this, but I think you're getting into arcana that are, it's certainly not my direct experience in terms of utilizing individuals.
I am aware of something to do along those lines, James, that there was an experiment that was conducted by moving nuclear assets and then watching to see who came chasing after it. I had been told that happened 18 out of 18 times, but I have no way to verify that information.
And again, I don't know to what level you guys can answer this, but was Jim Lukatsky part of the experiencer study? Colm or George?
Experiencer study? What was that? Can you define that?
I mean, did they look at Jim's DNA? Did they do the MRI scan to see if he had the caudate containment?
Well, yeah, that's something there's no way I can because all of the samples that were taken over time from various individuals, and all of the MRI imaging was done under confidentiality. So there's no way I can address that, because we do have HIPAA issues involved with that. So I can't confirm that.